Hello friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie Brick in full HD, then first of all give this video a like, and if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is Brick. So we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch Brick film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video, where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining. So you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So, let's start the video. The locked room mystery has been a staple of the thriller genre since time immemorial. There's a perverse delight in throwing a small cast of characters in a box, locking the door, and watching them work together or tear each other apart trying to get out. It's the backbone of the escape room movies, or the Saw franchise. Vincenzo Natali's sci-fi head-scratcher Cube is maybe the platonic ideal of this type of flick. Netflix's latest original film, the German-language techno-thriller Brick, clearly wants to chase that budget-conscious high with a simple mystery and a misfit cast of characters to solve it. It's frustrating, then, to see such high concept potential, some decent production design, and a couple of game leads fall victim to a mystery that unfolds with thudding obviousness. Our window into the world is tempestuous couple Tim, Matthias Schweighöfer of Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, and Schweighöfer's own spin-off, Army of Thieves, and Liv, Schweighöfer's IRL partner, Rubio Fee. The pair have suffered years of grief at the loss of Liv's pregnancy some time ago, and Tim's retreat into his solitary work making video games has pushed Liv to the point where she's chosen to pack up stakes and leave. But when she swings open the door to walk out on him, the two find, rather than the hallway to their cramped apartment, a tessellated matte black wall made of irregular bricks. It seems indestructible, and even slightly dangerously magnetic. Put too many metal objects near the wall, and they'll shoot back out at you. In fact, the whole building seems covered in this sci-fi substance, meaning, especially since they have no running water or cell signal, that they'll die of starvation in just a few days. Luckily, they've got some power tools they can use to punch their way into the neighboring apartments and the floors below. Together with neighbors they've never met or barely know, they'll have to find their way out of the building before time runs out for all of them. It's a juicy conceit for a thriller, and it hums nicely along when Tim, Liv, and their shaky alliance of neighbors get to work on finding a way out and testing the limits and parameters of the brick walls. Writer-director Philip Koch livens up these sequences with roving and tilting cameras spinning slowly down the array of holes they make in each floor. And the production design offers arguably more insight into the living conditions and character of its supporting cast than the script or performances. Like Cube before it, the best way to solve their predicament is maps and maths, and the added wrinkle of some characters knowing more about what traps them than they might let on offers some potential for intrigue. Unfortunately, Brick's characters aren't multifaceted or interesting enough to carry the bits in this kind of movie, where the pressure of life or death brings out everyone's true nature. Much of the film's emotional core revolves around Tim and Liv's reconciliation in the face of a life or death situation, a moment where, naturally, Tim gets to show up for Liv in ways he didn't before, but it plays out with such obviousness and through lengthy dialogue exchanges that it's hard to care. Same goes for the others in the group. Whacked-out druggie Marvin, Frederick Lau, and his more level-headed girlfriend Anna, Salber Lee Williams. The classic grandpa-granddaughter combo, Axel Werner and Sira Anna Fall, who primarily exist to offer even more vulnerable marks for our group to protect, and wild-eyed cop conspiracist Yuri, Murathan Muslu, whose glower and bulked-up physique leaves little question as to who will become the true threat in the film's final act. Yuri also introduces the idea that the brick wall is good, actually, and it's protecting them from something worse outside. The script has him trot out phrases like deep state and UFOs, with all the obviousness of a screenwriter clumsily trying to capture the paranoia of the times. Brick, to its mild credit, plays out the beats you'd expect in a thriller like this, from the interpersonal conflicts leading to bloodshed to the slow dispensing of clues that eventually circle right back around to the beginning. In those respects, Koch plays the hits well enough, but it's hard not to be frustrated by the arch characters, the flat Netflix presentation of it all, the script that lumbers in translation to English. The German language performances are well and good, but heaven help you if you attempt the English dub. In either case, the dialogue is clunky and utilitarian. What's more, for its promise of B-movie thrills and even one or two sci-fi vivisections, the violence feels relatively bloodless, going for TV-ready suspense rather than the nastiness a premise like this needs. It wants to be Ben Wheatley's High Rise so bad, but it settles for a bit of Home Alone. Every so often, Koch will cut to a fly buzzing around in the building or trapped in a glass. That's about as subtle as you're going to get here. And like flies, Brick buzzes around your senses, grabbing for your attention, but has a very short shelf life. Brick is a tense German thriller with a sci-fi twist. The film starts out as a dramatic piece about a couple who have faced some challenges in recent years. However, when a mysterious anomaly turns their apartment into a high-stakes escape room, they scramble to find out what exactly is going on. Initially, this couple appears to have enough on their plate as they navigate grief in their own unique ways. But when their entire apartment building is surrounded by ominous black bricks in bizarre shapes and formations, they begin to turn outward to solve their problems. Together with a handful of neighbors, Tim, Matthias Schweighöfer, and Olivia Fee struggle to find a way out. Alongside a wonderful cast, the film delivers a compelling and dramatic narrative with a touch of sci-fi magic. More than the actual plot, the dynamics between the characters define Brick and give it weight and gravitas that make it stand out. Additionally, the visuals and set design throughout are spectacular, with beautifully cinematic shots of fairly ordinary settings, such as a range of apartments decorated uniquely to reflect the tenants that occupy those spaces. This leads to a feature that is gripping and also visually stunning from start to finish. The way new characters are introduced and the distinctly different personalities that clash together also make for an interesting study as people from wildly different worlds are thrust into a situation where they must rely on one another. This results in a stunning and entertaining thriller. Simplicity is key in Brick, with the movie's core revolving around a simple idea. What if an entire building was under lockdown and the mismatched neighbors had to work together? However, it's restricted in its approach because the entire mystery becomes an all-consuming narrative. For a mystery thriller, this isn't an issue, but Brick's most engaging elements are the characters at the core of the story. While the mystery is eventually resolved, the film feels like it's missing an essential part to further connect the heroes with the story and its themes. Brick is effective in setting up a mystery, creating tension and urgency, and resolving the narrative. However, the characters who populate the story prove deeply fascinating, and as interesting as the mysterious brick wall is, the core characters, who are generally great, are slightly underdeveloped. Brick is still a gripping thriller. It's well made, but there is something lacking overall that could have been made better by diving deeper into the relationships of the central characters. Brick is a 2005 American neo-noir mystery thriller film written, edited, and directed by Rian Johnson in his directorial debut, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Brick was distributed by Focus Features and opened in New York and Los Angeles on April 7, 2006. The film's narrative centers on a hard-boiled detective story set in a California suburb. Most of the main characters are high school students. The film draws heavily in plot, characterization, and dialogue from hard-boiled classics, especially those by Dashiell Hammett. The title refers to a block of heroin compressed roughly to the size and shape of a brick. The film won the Special Jury Prize for Originality of Vision at the 2005 Sundance Film Festival and received positive reviews from critics. It has come to be regarded as a cult classic. Plot: high school student Brendan Fry discovers a note directing him to a payphone, where he receives a call from his ex-girlfriend Emily Kostic, begging him for help. She mentions a bad brick, the pin, and tug before abruptly hanging up, apparently afraid of a passing black Ford Mustang from which a distinctively branded cigarette is thrown. Unable to locate Emily, Brendan enlists his friend Brain for help. An encounter with another ex-girlfriend, Kara, leads him to a party held by flirtatious upper-class girl Laura Dannon and her boyfriend Brad Bramish. Laura points Brendan to Dode, Emily's drug-addicted new boyfriend, who arranges a meeting with Emily. Emily dismisses the phone call as a mistake and tells Brendan to let her go. Brendan steals her notepad and finds a note that leads him to her dead body in a tunnel the following morning. He suffers a brief altercation with an unidentified assailant hidden within the tunnel. It is unclear if this perpetrator is in fact the murderer or simply a bystander. Distraught, Brendan decides to investigate her murder, hiding the body at an undisclosed location to avoid police involvement. Brendan discovers that the pin refers to a secretive local drug baron. As Brad is a known drug user, Brendan picks a fight with him, hoping to attract the pin's attention. Later, a man wearing a beanie attacks Brendan. On his way home, Brendan sees the black Mustang in a parking lot and tries to break into it, but is caught by the beanie-wearing thug, who turns out to be the car owner. The man attacks Brendan, who repeatedly demands to meet the pin instead of fighting back. The man is Tug, the pin's main enforcer, who reluctantly takes Brendan to the pin's house. Brendan asks the pin for a job, and the pin says he will investigate Brendan and either hire him or have him hurt. Brendan will find out which by the next day. Laura reveals that she was at the pin's house the entire time and drives Brendan back to school. She explains that Emily stole a brick of heroin after being rejected by the pin's operation. Laura offers to help Brendan, but he distrusts her. The next day, Brendan learns that the pin has hired him. Dode calls Brendan and says he saw Brendan hide Emily's body. Believing Brendan is the murderer, he threatens to ruin him. Brendan meets the pin, who suspects that Tug is planning to betray him. At the pin's house, Tug tells Brendan that the pin recently bought 10 bricks of heroin. 8 were quickly sold off wholesale. The 9th was stolen and later returned contaminated, and the final brick remains to be sold. The pin arrives and says that someone wants to meet to discuss Emily, revealing that Tug was also romantically involved with her. Brendan intercepts Dode on the way to the meeting and discovers Emily was pregnant when she died. Dode believes the baby was his. Brendan passes out from his accumulated injuries and arrives at the meeting late to find Dode demanding money to reveal who killed Emily. Tug goes berserk and shoots Dode in the head, then threatens the pin, who walks away as Brendan faints again. Brendan awakens in Tug's bedroom and Tug tells him they are at war with the pin. Brendan arranges a meeting between the two and waits in Tug's bedroom. Laura comforts him as he grieves for Emily, and they kiss. Brendan recognizes her cigarette as the same brand that was dropped from the Mustang during the call with Emily. At the meeting, chaos erupts when it is discovered that the 10th brick is missing. Tug beats the pin to death while Brendan flees, escaping just as police arrive. As he goes, he passes the partly open trunk of Tug's car, where he has placed Emily's body to ensure that police blame her murder on Tug. The next day, Brendan meets Laura at the school. She reveals that Tug died after a shootout with the police. Brendan explains that he knows Laura set Emily up to take the fall for Laura's theft of the 9th brick, then manipulated Emily into meeting Tug, who panicked and killed her after she told him he was the father of her unborn child. Brendan has written a note to the school administration stating that the 10th brick is in Laura's locker. Laura vindictively tells Brendan that Emily did not want to keep the baby because she did not love the father, and that Emily was 3 months pregnant when she died, meaning the unborn child was his. Cast: Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Brendan Fry, Nora Zehetner as Laura Dannon, Lucas Haas as the Pin, Noah Fleiss as Tug, Matt O'Leary as the Brain, Emily DeRavin as Emily Kostic, Noah Segan as Dode, Richard Roundtree as Assistant Vice Principal Truman, Megan Good as Kara, Brian White as Brad Bramish. Production, development. The origins of Brick were Rian Johnson's obsessions with Dashiell Hammett's novels. Hammett was known for hard-boiled detective novels, and Johnson wanted to make a straightforward American detective story. He had discovered Hammett's work through an interview of the Coen brothers about their 1990 gangster film, Miller's Crossing. He read Red Harvest, 1929, and then moved on to The Maltese Falcon, 1930, and The Glass Key, 1931, the latter of which had been the main influence for the Coens' film. Johnson had grown up watching detective films and film noir. Reading Hammett's novels inspired him to make his own contribution. He realized that this would result in a mere imitation and set his piece in high school to keep things fresh. Of the initial writing process, he remarked, "It was really amazing how all the archetypes from that detective world slid perfectly over the high school types." He also wanted to disrupt the visual traditions that came from the genre. Once he started making Brick, he found it very much about the experience of being a teenager to me. Johnson maintained that the film was not autobiographical. Johnson wrote the first draft in 1997 after graduating from USC School of Cinematic Arts a year earlier. He spent the next 7 years pitching his script, but no one was interested because the material was too unusual to make with a first-time director. Johnson estimated the minimal amount of money for which he could make the film and asked friends and family for backing. His family were in the construction industry and contributed enough to encourage others to contribute. After Johnson had acquired about $450,000 for the film's budget, Brick began production in 2003. Filming. Although the film was shot in 20 days, Johnson spent a great deal of time beforehand refining the script and 3 months rehearsing with the cast. He had seen Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Manic, 2001, met with him, and knew that he wanted to cast the young actor. He encouraged the cast to read Hammett, but not to watch any noir films, because he did not want them influencing their performances. Instead, he had them watch Billy Wilder comedies like The Apartment, 1960, and His Girl Friday, 1940. He was initially nervous working with a professional cast and crew for the first time, but as soon as he started filming, this feeling went away and he had a good experience. Johnson shot the film in his hometown of San Clemente, California, on 35mm film stock. Much of the film takes place at San Clemente High School, which he attended. He enlisted current students to work on the film, shooting on weekends. The cinematographer was Steve Yedlin, a film school friend who had been involved with the project since the script was written. For the telephone booth scenes, Johnson and crew filmed deep in the San Clemente suburbia. The same sign for the cross streets of Sarmentoso and Camino del Rio still stands. However, the phone booth itself was a prop. Coffee and Pie Oh My was a Caro's restaurant, but it has since been abandoned. The drain tunnel from the film is located just down the street from the San Clemente High School football field and goes under the freeway by the Pico exit off-ramp. Johnson had difficulty finding a rundown house for the Pin's base of operations. The production found an appropriate house, but only had a week until it was demolished to rebuild on its lot. The basement was a set that they built, but the Pin's kitchen and living room still exists at the Blarney Castle Bed and Breakfast. Johnson also had difficulty finding a mansion for the party scene until, with 1 day left to find the location, a former telecom executive and eccentric millionaire allowed them to shoot in his place, which was still under construction. The big mansion was packed from floor to ceiling with payphones dating back to the 1950s. Johnson cited Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns and Shinichiro Watanabe's Cowboy Bebop, 1998, as influences on his visualization of the film. He used shoes as a design element for his characters and saw them as an instant snapshot of the essence of the characters. He has also stated that many of the film's visual cues were taken from the neo-noir Chinatown 1974, with its wide-open flat spaces. Special effects. The majority of the film's special effects were cheaply and efficiently produced using practical and in-camera effects. 8. Early in the film, for example, Duravan walks toward the camera out of a tunnel as a garbage bag floats downstream and engulfs the camera, transitioning to Joseph Gordon-Levitt back in his character's bedroom. To achieve this, the desired effect was filmed in reverse order. The garbage bag began over the camera and was pulled away during filming, as Duravan walked backwards into the tunnel. This footage was then cut into a scene in which a garbage bag was simply pulled over Gordon-Levitt's head. Filming a car driving slowly in reverse, then playing the footage backwards at a higher speed, gives the illusion of a car quickly approaching as the camera darts in front of it stylishly. Clever fades give the impression of time changes, while smash cuts add tension to a scene in which the protagonist wakes up after passing out. Certain edits were also introduced to the film to time footage to different dialogue, adding certain information and leaving other information out. These edits are noticeable, as the actors' mouths are not always moving in sync with their dialogue. One particular scene, in which Duravan's character floated toward the camera, used a green screen, but it was edited out of the film before its completion. Editing. The original cut of the film ran over 2 hours, although it was edited down to 117 minutes for the Sundance Film Festival. An additional 7 minutes were cut before the theatrical release, including a shot of Ziehetner's naked back as she put her shirt back on after she and Gordon-Levitt's character had sex. According to a post by Johnson on his own forums, he felt that the nudity felt wrong in the context of the film, and that he preferred to leave the degree of intimacy ambiguous, although he occasionally found himself second-guessing that decision. Music. Main article, Brick. The score to Brick was composed by Johnson's cousin Nathan Johnson with additional support and music from the Cinematic Underground. The score harkens back to the style, feel, and overall texture of noir films. It features traditional instruments such as the piano, trumpet, and violin, and also contains unique and invented instruments such as the winophone, metallophone, tack pianos, filing cabinets, and kitchen utensils, all recorded with one microphone on an Apple PowerBook. Since Nathan Johnson was in England during most of the production process, the score was composed almost entirely over Apple iChat, with Ryan playing clips of the movie for Nathan, who would then score them. The two met in New York City to mix the soundtrack. The soundtrack CD of the movie was released on March 12, 2006, by Lakeshore Records. In addition to Johnson's score, it contains songs by the Velvet Underground, Anton Karas, and Kay Arman, as well as the big band version of Frankie and Johnny performed by Bunny Berrigan, and a full unedited performance of The Sun Whose Rays Are All Ablaze by Nora Ziehetner. Johnson has confirmed that various elements in the film were influenced by Twin Peaks creator David Lynch. Home media. The Region 1 DVD release of Brick was released on August 8, 2006, as part of the Focus Features Spotlight series. Special features include selection of deleted and extended scenes with introductions by Johnson, audition footage featuring Nora Ziehetner and Noah Segan, and feature audio commentary with Ryan Johnson, Nora Ziehetner, Noah Segan, producer Ram Bergman, production designer Jody Tillen, and costume designer Michelle Posh. The Region 2 DVD was released on September 18, 2006. The Blu-ray for Brick was released on January 7, 2020 by Kino Lorber, which was supervised by Johnson and Yedlin. It was previously scheduled to be released on May 7, 2019. Reception and legacy. Box office. Brick premiered in the United States on April 7, 2006 in 2 theaters. It opened to United Kingdom audiences on May 12, 2006, on a limited number of screens. According to the DVD commentary track, the film was made for $450,000. The film grossed $2.07 million in North America and a total of $3.9 million worldwide. Critical response. Brick has an approval rating of 80% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 143 reviews and an average score of 7.1110. The consensus states, "This entertaining homage to noir's past has been slickly and compellingly updated to a contemporary high school setting," and ranked number 35 on Entertainment Weekly's list of the 50 best high school movies. Based on 34 critic reviews, Metacritic gave it an average score of 72 out of 100, indicating generally favorable reviews. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, stating, "It works in the sense that the classic Hollywood noirs worked. The story is never clear while it unfolds, but it provides a rich source of dialogue, behavior, and incidents." The film's only serious flaw, thought Ebert, was that the characters were not entirely believable, and thus it was difficult to care about the outcome of events for the characters. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone also gave the film a positive review, explaining, "A spoof would have been easy. Instead, Johnson plunges off the deep end, risking ridicule by shaping this spellbinder with grit and gravitas." Stephen Holden of the New York Times commented, "Mr. Haas and Mr. Gordon-Levitt at least succeed in evoking the outlines of their characters, but the film's ham-handed reliance on period argot not only wears thin, it keeps the characters, such as they are, at a chilly distance." Brick ranks 489th on Empire Magazine's 2008 list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. Way back in 1997, a Canadian sci-fi horror film titled Cube became a video store cult hit thanks to its clever story, which finds 6 strangers waking up one day trapped in a series of deadly interconnected rooms and having to solve a series of puzzles and challenges to escape or die trying. The film spawned a sequel, a prequel, and a Japanese remake, and its DNA leaked into the escape room craze that would follow a handful of years later and spawn a whole new generation of similar, largely single-location puzzle box movies, where the characters doubled as game pieces and the game became their whole frightening reality. The newest addition to this genre is Netflix's German-language thriller Brick. At first glance, Brick seems to have a lot in common with Cube, as it tells the story of a group of renters who become trapped inside their building when a mysterious, almost alien black wall surrounds their apartments, covering their doors and windows and locking them inside with seemingly no way to escape. The difference here is that, until the end, it's never actually clear if there's a game afoot in Brick. Maybe there is. Or maybe the black wall is serving a different purpose entirely. Maybe it's meant to protect those trapped within. It's inside those margins that Brick attempts to become something different, something more than just a solve the puzzle and escape movie. But the questions it poses and the answers it ultimately gives aren't compelling enough to make this film a standout in its subgenre. Brick's 2 primary characters are a still somewhat youngish couple, Tim and Liv, played by real-life partners, and Army of Thieves co-stars Matthias Schweighöfer, Oppenheimer, and Rubio Fee, Polar. Tim and Liv's relationship hasn't been the same since they lost their child in a horrible miscarriage, and the movie opens with Liv giving Tim one last chance to chart a new beginning with her. Tim remains emotionally stalled, however, and Liv decides to leave him the following morning. If only she could. When the two awaken, they find that their apartment has been encased in a carbon-black, magnetic brick wall that seems to exhibit almost supernatural properties. The bricks aren't normal-sized bricks, but rather cubes and rectangles of different shapes and sizes that almost look like a random Tetris board. With their personal problems still lingering and the building's water shut off, the two go about trying to figure out how to escape their small apartment before they starve to death. They can't break through the bricks covering every possible exit, but they do figure out that they can bore through their apartment wall into the next unit, where their druggy neighbors are even more freaked out than they are. Floors and ceilings are also fair game, and Tim and Liv eventually pick up a whole crew of apartment dwellers, all trapped, who band together looking for a way out. The problem is, the more neighboring apartments they break into, the deeper the mystery goes. The superhost, who's subleasing at least some of the apartments, is an early suspect, but he's found dead with his hands cut off. A different dead body is found another floor or two down, and this guy was obsessed with cracking a secret code that he felt was hidden within the mystery wall's brick pattern. Maybe the notes he left behind will offer a solution? Or maybe not, as a different neighbor passionately argues that the wall is there for a reason, to protect them from some unknown horror, perhaps a war, that's burning the world down outside their walls. Brick's setup is fine, if a bit overly familiar, and its characters all feel sketched in enough that nobody comes across as strictly a stereotype. Schweighöfer and Fee are both good at playing a couple who probably should be together but can't find a way forward, until they're literally forced to. But while their performances are sturdy, the film too subtly addresses their repairing relationship for it to carry any sort of emotional oomph. Writer-director Philip Koch shoots his characters in tight close-ups and through the various busted-out holes connecting all the apartments. The black brick wall itself reveals itself to be a not altogether convincing digital effect that feels more and more like a video game graphic the more the movie's FX team asks it to do. Brick tackles conspiracy thinking and fast-spreading paranoia among its themes, and it isn't afraid to drop a pop culture reference when it needs to. Both Squid Game and The Matrix get name-dropped at different points. All of that's well and good, but the big problem here is that though the characters stumble upon a hidden room and technological secrets are revealed to be in play, the film's central mystery never really develops into anything all that interesting. In fact, as Brick enters its final act, the wall feels less like a fascinating puzzle to solve and more like a monotonous problem to overcome. By the time we arrive at the film's twist ending, which is meant to be shocking but honestly fails to elicit much more than a shrug, it has become apparent that Brick has more in common with a bottom-tier Black Mirror episode than it does a true sci-fi puzzle box movie like Cube. It does a lot of little things competently, but doesn't do any one thing exceedingly well, leaving it feeling like a genre exercise in search of a story worth telling. Brick, the latest German film to connect globally on Netflix, has a twisted and unexpected ending that is worth reviewing in detail. The new Netflix thriller, directed by Philip Koch, traps several characters inside a building with the appearance of mysterious walls. The event leads to a complex unraveling as the characters attempt to make their way free. 2025's Netflix viewership for Brick has been strong, and much of this is due to the film's mystery. From the beginning, it is unclear if these walls have an origin in science fiction, the supernatural, or something more mundane. The characters assemble a party to look into this, breaking through their own floorboards into other apartments and discovering dark secrets. Still, even after watching the latest hit Netflix movie, many have been left with just as many questions as when the film began. For that purpose, it is essential to review what happened in the movie, especially to the charismatic lead characters, Olivia and Tim. After discovering a pattern of lights that could unlock the brick walls, Olivia and Tim attempt to make their way out. Unfortunately, Marvin's attempt to kill Yuri was unsuccessful, and the film's de facto villain is still there to stop them. A violent tussle occurs, but Yuri is eventually defeated, and Olivia and Tim escape onto the streets of Hamburg. Once this is done, however, things don't look much brighter. As they walk through the streets, it can be seen that the same brick technology has covered every structure in sight. Audio plays explaining that an accident at Epsilon Nano Defense caused this, and it may have been a result of intentional foul play. Regardless, Olivia and Tim, played by Army of Thieves stars Rubio Fee and Matthias Schweighöfer, make it out of their home, and they are able to find their camper van. They pile inside, and as helicopters fly overhead, they drive off into the distance. Their fate is not certain, nor is it clear that they will certainly be able to make it out of Hamburg. Regardless, they are together, and they have been afforded a chance to start a new life with one another. Yuri is discovered in a basement apartment alongside Anton's dead body, who has connections to Epsilon. The character immediately comes off as an uncomfortable figure, but the party decides it is in their best interest not to act too rashly toward him. He seems to simply be a conspiracy theorist, and this is not seen as a pertinent danger. Unfortunately, this outlook is misguided. Yuri was clearly involved in Anton's death, as he nearly confesses a few scenes later before making the excuse that he used to be a police officer. Yuri is terrified of anyone making it out, assuming that the brick walls are there to protect them, and any action against them would get everyone killed. In order to preserve this false sense of safety, Yuri enacts violence on the rest of the group. He kills Leah in the brick movie and has to be tied up. In the following scenes, he makes attempts on the lives of everyone in order to keep them trapped inside, but fortunately, these attempts fail. Anton is connected to Epsilon Nanodefense, and this led to his demise. After the brick walls were put up in the apartment, Anton attempted to put together the sequence to unlock them. Unfortunately, this led to Yuri feeling compelled to take drastic action, who then killed him. Epsilon Nanodefense created these walls as a way of keeping the citizenry safe in the event of something like a chemical attack. There's a genuine purpose to this technology, which could be an effective way of keeping people safe. However, due to the overreaching of the technology, it has wound up destructive in this case. The movie ends with the suggestion that an intentional attack on Epsilon may have caused this event, which sees the city of Hamburg covered in this nano-defense technology. It is a frightening image, but even more so when considering what implications this might have on the rest of the world. While in this story, the technology has only been used in Hamburg, the potential for greater use internationally is a terrifying prospect. The means to resist it are limited, as only a few characters have been able to figure out the light patterns to break out. What this could mean for the future of Brick's world is terrifying. Olivia and Tim escape the building, but it is not clear what kind of world they will now have to live in. They will pile inside of their camper and drive away, but military checkpoints will certainly stop them shortly. The ending of Brick sets up so many more terrifying questions than it asks, and could potentially set up a sequel if Netflix wishes to pursue it. Brick is an immensely enjoyable film, a virtuoso exercise that is at once an affectionate homage, an exercise in romantic fantasy, and an oblique commentary on teenage life. We're simultaneously engaged by its attractive hero and invited to stand back and watch him from a distance. However, those who do not enter into the spirit of the piece may well find it deeply irritating. A Twilight Zone-style premise is spun into an entertaining what's-going-on thriller Brick, a Philip-conscious tale of a couple who find themselves entombed in their apartment by a black brick wall. This Netflix title should satisfy genre fans and attract a wider mainstream audience drawn by the intriguing premise, and healthy viewing figures seem likely when it bows on the streamer in multiple territories including Germany, the US, and UK. On July 10th, following the world premiere at Munich, best known for television, Sessa Tribes of Eurobe 2021, and hard-hitting Boral drama of Pakkoa. 2010 wastes little time getting to the heart of his story. Games programmer Tim, Matteo Ashuel Daler Oppenheimer AAM, and his architect partner Livia Rubioi are a couple at a crossroads. Their lives are defined by loss, stress, silence, and empty promises. One evening, Olivia announces she has quit her job and purchased the camper van, inviting Tim to run away and together. His refusal to leave is something they will come to regret. Plans what may or may not be early clues as to what is about to unfold. Extensive work on their entire apartment block is coming to an end. Palls of dense gray smoke hang in the distant sky, marking a fire in Halfen City near Hamburg. Cinematographer Alexander Fizosin gives any outdoor scene a larger-than-life dreamlike quality as light dazzles and colors glow when Olivia awakens the next morning. She discovers every window and door of their apartment is blocked by an impenetrable black brick wall. There is no electricity, no running water, and even more alarming for any modern urban night, no Wi-Fi connection. Trying to figure out what has happened is the starting point of a situation that escalates quickly, from bafflement to the certainty they are both going to die. On one level, the ordeal that follows is a very extreme way of testing their relationship to breaking point in the hope it may be able to heal. Smashing through a wall into another apartment liberates the story from its initial claustrophobic setting and allows Koch to introduce other characters. These include drug-up lovers Marvin Frederick Clow bringing dolish comic relief, and Dana Salberia Williams, the elderly assled Axel Berner and his granddaughter Lee Sura Anna F., and policeman Yuri Murathan Muslu, who seems to be channeling Hans Gruber. Alan Rickman production designer Teresa Anna. Fuss definitely sets the tone of each new apartment with Marvin and Anna's garish, beloved nest, all purple and neon. Every fresh character brings something to the mix, positioning themselves on the spectrum between cautious and impetuous, thoughtful and gung-ho. Marvin suggests they are trapped in a twisted escape room or some Matrix-like multiverse. And indeed, there are echoes of other movies from Vince O. and a QB 1997 to Lure and Finnegan's of a Very Uma 2019. There is even some consideration of whether the brick wall is not keeping them in, but keeping out some unknown threat. Rick proceeds at pace, adopting some of the template from old-school disaster movies. Ike, I, the Poseidon Adventure Area 1972, as we await the next revelation and latest challenge and discover who will survive. Call shows a good sense of pace and momentum as bursts of action are leavened with some dry humor. His screenplay remains credible and involving until it loses some of the wind from its sails when the group starts piecing together the mysteries of the wall, more conventional in its later stages. I'm a sucker for single-location movies. I don't care what the genre is if it's strictly limited to one location. I'm in. It could be a house, a train, a plane, a car, a spaceship, a bank, or a ma. I am locked in. Sydney Lit 12. Angry Mina is such a sweltering hot drama that it keeps getting better with each rewatch. Take Rampu as a Christmas classic. Everybody Says I'm Fia is an underrated gem, and the list just goes on. However, I think the overall attitude towards this subgenre changed after the CO-19 pandemic. Suddenly, what once seemed like a novel storytelling tool became our everyday reality. On top of that, with safety measures in place, shooting in one location became a very cost-effective method of making movies or even entire shows. Hence, what once seemed like a cool gimmick started feeling lazy, uninventive, and stale. Sure, recent releases like I, Evil Dead Rise, A Sinners, A Carry On, and A Bra have proven that there's a lot that can be done in one location. But do as Sabria manage to join the ranks or fall short? Let's find out. Philip Cox. Zabrika tells the story of Tim and Liv, a couple in Hamburg who have been married to each other for nearly 7 years. But after Liv suffered a miscarriage, Tim shut her out of his life completely and dedicated all his waking hours to developing his game. Yet, Liv tried to rekindle whatever they had lost by requesting of Tim that they go on a road trip to Paris. Not realizing that his marriage was on its last legs, Tim chose to prioritize his work over his wife yet again. So at the dead of the night, Liv chose to pack her bags and head out with the aim of restarting her life. Tim tried to stop her, but she wasn't in the mood to listen to him. She opened the door to their flat to walk out of his life. But there was a strange wall standing between her and her future. Since the apartment building was under renovation, they assumed it was some kind of a protective layer to safeguard the inhabitants from harm. That said, when they realized that the wall was impenetrably magnetic, they started to suspect that this was something mankind had never seen before. Initially, Abra seemed like a CO-19 allegory where people, especially couples on the brink of separating from each other, were forced to stay together and hash out their differences. People living in apartments who had never crossed paths with each other had to relearn how to coexist, and the results were sometimes productive and other times they were lethal. So yeah, I just assumed that the wall not only represented the virus, but also the metaphorical walls we had put up around ourselves to avoid any kind of human interaction. However, when the involvement of Nanak, a private company, and the government was alleged, I began to think about 1945 and 1989. COD doesn't make any explicit historical or political references, just vague stuff about the deep state and a potential war. However, if you look at Germany's association with Nazism throughout the A40s, that destruction of the Berlin Wall in the late A80s, and the country's recent revival of right-wing fascism, that bizarre wall takes on a whole new meaning. It becomes a reflection of the very real fear that maybe the country is on the brink of losing all the progress they'd made over the last few decades. When not seen through that lens, though, all the interpersonal drama and mystery solving get a bit repetitive after a point. The set designed by Peter Gasper. Production designed by Thea Anafikis and art direction by Iran and Daniel Vaklavakina. Bria are really phenomenal. Hence, Koch, along with cinematographer Alexander Fasosin and editor Hans Horn, doesn't leave a single opportunity to show that he and his team had built multiple floors. So, with each flat choke full of amazing detailing by having the characters hammer and chop their way to the basement. The stunt work is solid. The VFX and CGI are used really sparingly, which is why they're all the more effective. The sound design is nothing short of brilliant. The tone is consistently tense. However, the pacing is off. I mean, look, I can say that Koch's from around 12 hours to at least 7 days to truly get the paranoia to peak. But if Call always wanted to keep the length of the ordeal to 12 hours, I can't complain. What I can say, though, is that he could have made those 12 hours feel like 7 days. When the point of the film is to make the audience feel as desperate, helpless, and paranoid as the characters. Why is he rushing through the revelations, plot twists, and shocks? Why is he so afraid to just stay in the moment and let us marinate with the characters in the sweat, dust, blood, and tears? I don't know. Wherever the writing and direction falter, the actors of Fabrica swoop in to save the day. Matthias Schweighöfer is a force of nature. Time and again, he has proven that he can be very loud and expressive, but as Tim, he truly shines in the quieter moments where he hints at the tidal waves of introspection that this self-centered man is experiencing while coming to terms with the predicament he and his wife are in. Rubio is fantastic as well. Her chemistry with Matthias is on point. She absolutely knocks it out of the park during a really heartbreaking verbal battle with Matthias. Frederick. Claus is the neurotic. Marvin is splendid. He makes the act of being unable to control one's emotions look like an art. Spurley Williams as Marvin's girlfriend Anna is like the voice of reason amidst all this chaos. The confidence with which she takes charge of every sticky situation is inspirational. Sura Anifal and Axel Wernern are so sweet together that it made me wish that the entire ordeal had unraveled through the perspective of the granddaughter-grandfather duo. The brief exchanges they had during their limited screen time really got to me. Murathan Muslu as the antagonist Yuri is perfectly annoying. Other than them, the rest of this supporting cast don't really get to do a lot. If they did, I'm sure they would have been great too. Overall, I think Erica is a decent one-location sci-fi drama. The reason why it falls short of being counted as a great movie is because it's too reserved about everything. I'm sure that your knee-jerk reaction to its ending will be that it didn't reveal enough about the origins of the wall. But how would more information about the wall have changed the impact of the whole movie? The origins of the wall aren't the point. What the wall brings out in the people that it's seemingly protecting is what matters. And even in that aspect, there's a weird level of restraint shown by Philip Call. He introduces a conflict, brings it to the edge, but then fails to give it the resolution that it deserves. Now, if you look hot as sinners, it doesn't reveal anything about the vampires. There are not a lot of expository revelations about its central characters, and its conclusion is really open-ended. Yet, it feels like a complete experience because of its exploration of history, culture, and the psyche of the characters. In doing so, a seemingly simple juke joint becomes something more. That's what's missing in a Brick. Is it worth the watch, though? Yes, sure it is. And if you have any opinions that you want to share after watching, the comments section is open. For you. Brick is a tense German thriller with a sci-fi twist. The film starts out as a dramatic piece about a couple who have faced some challenges in recent years. However, when a mysterious anomaly turns their apartment into a high-stakes escape room, they scramble to find out what exactly is going on. Initially, this couple appears to have enough on their plate as they navigate grief in their own unique ways. But when their entire apartment building is surrounded by ominous black bricks in bizarre shapes and formations, they begin to turn outward to solve their problems. Together with a handful of numbers, Tim Matthias Schweighöfer, a dealer, and Olivia Rubio struggle to find a way out. Alongside a wonderful cast, the film delivers a compelling and dramatic narrative with a touch of sci-fi magic, more than the actual plot. The dynamics between the characters define Abraya and give it weight and gravitas that make it stand out. Additionally, the visuals and set design throughout are spectacular, with beautifully cinematic shots of fairly ordinary settings, such as a range of apartments, decorated uniquely to reflect the tenants that occupy those spaces. This leads to a feature that is gripping and also visually stunning from start to finish. The way new characters are introduced and the distinctly different personalities that clash together also make for an interesting study as people from wildly different worlds are thrust into a situation where they must rely on one another. This results in a stunning and entertaining thriller. Simplicity is key in a Brick, with the movie's core revolving around a simple idea. What if an entire building was under lockdown and the mismatched neighbors had to work together? However, it's restricted in its approach because the entire mystery becomes an all-consuming narrative. For a mystery thriller, this isn't an issue. Both to Break's the most engaging elements are the characters at the core of the story. While the mystery is eventually resolved, the film feels like it's missing an essential part to further connect the heroes with the story and its themes. Brick is effective in setting up a mystery, creating tension and urgency, and resolving the narrative. However, the characters who populate the story prove deeply fascinating, and as interesting as the mysterious brick wall is, the core characters, who are generally great, are slightly underdeveloped since he landed on my radar with the thrilling and intelligent sci-fi thriller. Looper Ian Johnson has remained one of my favorite filmmakers, as he's ventured through everything from A Galaxy Far, Far Away with the Star Wars The Last Jedi to hitting the road Columbo like fashion with The Poker Face. However, his work in the whodunit and noir genres has always been some of the most compelling in his filmography. Going back to his directorial debut, we have Brick A, which even after 20 years remains one of the most fascinating debuts for any filmmaker, led by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Shortly after his return to acting, A Brick centers on Brandon Fry, a Southern Californian high schooler who deftly walks apart from the various cliques and administration. However, Brandon's isolation suddenly becomes disrupted when his ex-girlfriend Emily leaves a note in his locker asking to have a covert conversation with him, in which he discovers she's of local criminals headed by the Pin when Emily goes missing shortly thereafter. Brennan takes to investigating the dark corners of his town, which prove far more dangerous than they initially appear. Inspired by many of Dashiell Hammett's classic detective novels, A Lucky of the Maltese Felina and The Glass Key, Johnson's efforts to translate the detective noir formula into a high school setting is surprisingly effective. The majority of Fabric's characters feel just as authentic to the teenage world as they would in a more mature setting, though there are certainly a few that feel out of place, particularly Megan Good's stage actor character Kara. She's certainly an intriguing figure to watch, but some of her actions and dialogue don't quite mesh with its setting. The driving heart of the plot of A Missing Person, an attended drug stash, similarly finds itself just on the verge of believability. There's no denying that high schoolers find ways to get their hands on substances, be it on compass or off. And while it's humorous the way Johnson established Lucas Ho's Kingpin as being a live athome adult, it does create some questions as to the actual logistics behind his criminal lifestyle. However, one of the biggest elements of Fabrica that remains a real fascination for me is Johnson's crackling script. It almost feels as though it was pulled directly from the hard-boiled detective novels of the 30s and 40s. There are times when the dialogue can feel a bit densey and tough to connect with, but in a way that's not only a welcome tribute to said genre, but is also an invitation to revisit the film multiple times in an effort to properly interpret what's being said and how the plot plays out. As with many iconic filmmakers, Johnson started from humble beginnings with a brick, having assembled a budget just shy of $500,000. So with the help of his family and a few others, and filming entirely in his hometown of San Clemente. What's more impressive is that this actually proved a benefit. Johnson had an intimate knowledge of the area to not only choose several great locations for the film, but do so in a way that makes the movie often feel bigger than its budget implies. Whether it's high-speed driving scenes in which characters are nearly run over, or dream sequences using DIY methods to craft some of its more ambitious visuals. Johnson and cinematographer Steve Yedlin pull off some incredible sequence, Sessa, throughout the film. Some of the more memorable scenes remain the chase scene between Brendan and the thug attempting to kill him, which has an effective balance of long shots and quick cuts to keep tension high, as well as the increasingly tense conversations held in the Pin's basement. As with any detective story, having a captivating lead embodying the protagonist is key to its success. And not only did Johnson craft a well-realized character in this form of Brendan, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt brings him to life with aplomb. When one thinks of the film noir and neon noir genres, it's easy to immediately be drawn to the likes of Fack Nicholson in China and Harrison Ford Blade Runner. Yet, it's Gordon-Levitt's turn as Brandon that often comes to mind. Dot the Emmy winner truly did a magnificent job of mixing the assured cold exterior of classic noir detectives with the vulnerability of a high schooler Willie. The rest of the cast is also just as effective, particularly No Fleece as the hot-headed yet sensitive Tug and Johnson main-starred Burnout Node. The other major Statina Bricks roster is Nora Hatner as the fan, Fatal Laura. I certainly wasn't always falling for the false front she was putting up to Brendan, and yet, nearly every time she was on screen, Zahatner did a wonderful job of presenting multiple layers to her character that when combined with Johnson's stylish direction made her nonetheless fascinating to follow. In 2005, Sundance gave out an award called the Special Jury Prize for Originality of Vision, which they seem to have only given out in 2005. Every festival and award show has their own way of doing things, but I think that's odd. The two films, however, make perfect sense for 2005. If you had to explain that time period to someone, I don't think you could do better than with Rian Johnson's Erica and Miranda Julie and You and Everyone We Know. Dom Miranda Julie's film is undeniably stranger, but it represents the high watermark of weird films about normal life and how no one's experience really is that normal. There are dozens of films like it, and most of them don't manage to toe the line between weird and specific nearly as well. Rian Johnson's career has had an interesting trajectory since A Brick. He's directed key episodes of Fab Breaking Bad, made a film for indie legends The Mountain Goats, directed a Star Wars movie, and made one of the best movies of the last 5 years in A Knives Out. You might have predicted Miranda Julie's career in 2005. But that list for Rian Johnson is pretty bizarre. It's not that he didn't seem talented, it just seems like a surprising combination of things for anyone. You also might not have had a lot of hope for film as a whole in 2005, with the Oscars voting that A Crash was the best film of the year. I've written pretty extensively about this before you, but I really just cannot say enough about how much I hate Out Crash. I mention it here to bring you back to the time period, along with a Brokeback Mountain, a Syriana, a Walk the Line, and a Hustle Flow, because a 1930s crime story told in the 2000s. The style is identical, and the language, which is the key to the entire genre, is intact. Every character says things like, "Keep your specs on and quips fly constantly." You need to buy into this for a Brickett to work at all, but that's not difficult to do. Joseph Gordon-Levitt wasn't yet at the height of his powers in 2005, but he carries this as the Bogart figure at the box center who is just trying to figure out what happened. There's a dead body and a brick of heroin and a city underworld to wait through, but mostly it's the story of the steady downfall of a detective. The good ones always are. Roger Roberta gave it 3 stars and said it was great, but all style and heart to engage with, because the characters aren't believable. He's absolutely right, but it doesn't matter as much to me. I saw What Brick when it came out and loved it, but the details fell out of my head. I watched it again a few weeks ago for this review and had the same experience, so I watched it a 3rd time. The murder and the drugs just don't matter, and that might be a problem for you. It matters that something holds the whole thing together, but just what it is feels less important. Good is all style anyway, and a Bricko clears that bar with a ton of room to spare. Just who kills who and what it means for their future is a mystery, which this is, but it's really not where your eye should focus. Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Brandon, a high school student who gets pulled into what initially seems like a confusing plot, but clears up into a pretty simple problem. Someone was murdered, and it has a connection to him that threatens to bring him down. Further, it seems like everyone he runs into is connected, and their exact involvement isn't always what it seems. Like the detectives of old, Brandon has just enough information to be dangerous, and he refuses to walk that away when he's given the chance. He has to get a little dirty to figure it out, but that's a risk he knew he'd have to take. The language is the point. When Brendan starts trying to find information, he asks a woman if she is still picking your teeth with freshmen, and she offers that if you're ever looking to get back into things, I could use you. It's not exactly the slang of the 30s, but it's highly stylized and often obscures what's happening. You won't follow every exchange, but you aren't intended to. Just like the plot, the point is not that every scene shows you another beat until you see the murder and find the killer. These are clues that are sometimes helpful and sometimes not. Brandon's source of info is a guy in glasses who seems to know everything and says things like, "Ask any dope rat where the junk sprang, and they'll say they scrapped it off, that who scored it off this, who bought it off someone." And after 4 or 5 connections, the list always ends with the pin. If this wasn't all done perfectly, it would be disorienting or annoying. But it flows like a language that you don't fully speak, but you can understand. The pin is a drug dealer, and through extended discussion and hinting, Brandon realizes he needs to get into that scene to find out what happened. He does. It goes poorly, and you can guess the rest. The reason you should watch A Brick is that you have to experience it. I don't care about the law, murder, and I largely don't care about the ending. I think Ever is right as he usually is, and the film sputters out and doesn't necessarily pay off, but the experience of getting there is really incredible. Richard Roundtree Shaft himself plays the vice principal who confronts Brendan when the situation gets hot. They have a conversation that both confronts the ridiculousness of the situation. When Brendan says he should write him up if he has a problem and directly ask the VP to not kick in my homeroom door, but also the seriousness of it when the VP says there needs to be a fall guy to give to the police. Abria doesn't hide from the conceit that this is a murder story with high school kids in it, but it never winks at the camera. It's in moments like these that you remember how absurd this should be, but how it isn't. Is it better than the last movie we looked at? A Boat or The Lady from Shanghai and Drea are murder stories where the murder is less important than the style of how you hear about it. Abria has the much harder task of setting in a modern world and ultimately is a little easier to follow. They're both worth your time for the same reason, but I think the older one is the better film. Rian Johnson came back to the confusing murder story genre with a more conventional taking in knives, and that is a much better experience. But you probably already knew that. If you haven't seen that one, you simply must. Is it the best movie of all time? And no, A Person A is weak, but comparing the two does raise the question of what you want out of a movie. Do A Brick is a better choice for a Tuesday after dinner? If you just want 2 hours of an experience you aren't likely to have elsewhere, this is near the top of the list. It's not going to revolutionize how you think about film, which is hardly a criticism, and I think that's okay for a modern noir. I watched it 3 times though, so make of that what you will. I love a good whodunit-based murder mystery movie, and if it is set in high school or college, then count me in. The movie Brick, which is Rian Johnson's directorial debut film, exactly does that. Combines 2 of my favorite things: neon noir murder mystery in a high school setting. So what could go wrong, right? Brick looks like a solid movie on the paper. The premise sounds cool. The actors are phenomenal. I mean, it has actors like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Emily Raven, and Lucas Haas. And the movie is directed by Rian Johnson, who is known for directing some excellent films like Knives Out, Looper, and Star Wars: The Last Jedi. But still, I don't know why, but I kind of have mixed feeling about this movie. Some things work really well in this movie, while others bothered me a bit. On one hand, I really like the interconnectedness of the plot, how every elements and plot points connect to the particular ending, but on the other hand, the complexity of dialogues fell through the roof for me. So through this article, I'll try to convey this ambiguity of mine so that you can decide whether or not Brick is worth watching. Brick is a neon noir who died at mystery. Movie set in high school, which focuses on Brendan, who after getting a phone call from his terrified ex-girlfriend, discovers her dead body at an underground drain tunnel. He still has feeling for her and tries to solve this murder mystery on his own without the interference of the cops. So he hides her body. And now, with the help of his friend Brain, he has to befriend the drug lord of the city, the Pin, and gain acceptance into his inner circle to learn more about Emily. After this movie, Rian Johnson went on to make some rather great movies such as Knives Out and Looper, and you can clearly see his evolution as a director. Considering Johnson's directorial filmography, Brick is certainly not one of his bests, but that doesn't make this movie unappealing. Enjoying a movie is a very subjective thing and can vary between individuals, but I'll try to explain my experience with Brick through various points. Rian was inspired from the novels of Dashiell Hammett, which included some heavy detective mystery in them. He read and studied the novels, especially the words, slangs, and language used by drug communities. This was an excellent thing to do, but the implementation of these in the script didn't really work out from me. The dialogues were confusing, and I had to rewind the movie a lot, despite clocking at just 110 minutes, 1 hour 50 minutes. It took me nearly 2.5 hours to complete it. I also had to open the script of the movie so that I could reread and understand certain lines. I mean, I've watched many movies with dialogues I couldn't understand. Like Scottish movies, their English is very different than what are we used to. But still, I got the crux of the story. But here in Brick, it was a bit difficult for me. I completely understand that Rian wanted to do something out of the box for his directorial debut, so he chose to alter the dialogues. But when we as audience have a hard time understanding them, it creates a little bit of problem then. But this dialogue thing is not all bad. It in fact increases the rewatchability. You might have to watch this movie a second time to get and understand every tiny aspect of the script clearly. Some dialogues are fortunately a little quotable and are written very well like this one here, despite its lower budget. The movie consists of some stellar caster and most of the actors do a tremendous job. Joseph Gordon-Levitt shines in every scene he is in. He totally sells the feelings, emotions, and complexity of his character, Brandon. Brandon is kind of a badass who is not that muscular but still doesn't step away from a little action, and Joseph portrayed the role of this high school student at its best. Nora Hatner as Laura is just stunningly amazing. She looks absolutely breathtaking in the scene where her character Laura plays piano and recites the sun whose rays are all ablaze. Laura is a complex, sophisticated rich girl, and it seemed like Zahatner really understood the traits of the character, because at no point it seemed like her performance was lacking. Every other character, for instance, Luca has as the Pin, Noah Fleece as Tug, Noah again as Dew, and Matt Leary as Brain, are as good as they can be. Emily Davin, though, had a short role as Emily, perfectly depicted her character as a drug addict. Despite this being Rian Johnson's first movie, he did a good enough job. He does his best in setting up the environment. You'll really start to feel this whole neon noir vibe. Also, the very first scene where Brendan discovers Emily's body, and the way camera first focuses on him and then on the body establishes the fact that the makers didn't compromise on direction and screenplay despite having a low budget. Even the foot chase sequence and its choreography in this movie is so well done. The camera in this chase sequence was surprisingly not shaky, and the scene showcased the clear view of our characters. So cinematography is applaudable in this movie, but due to the budget limitations, the movie doesn't look much visually stunning. Mind you, the shots are beautiful, the camera angles are great, but you can clearly notice its low budgetness. Even the color grading in Brick is just natural. In most of the movies, the editor enhances color of the frames. The grass will look more green, the sky will look more blue, and so on. But here, they all look a bit dull and natural. And as I said earlier, this is not a problem and in fact works in favor of this movie. These all things combined give this movie kind of an old-style neon noir vibe. But for people who drool over the movies with beautiful visuals, Brick won't appeal to them in this department. Coming to the pace of the movie, it is all right too. There are some scenes where the movie starts to lose its grip, and the complex dialogues certainly do not help in this case. There are even times when I had to pause the movie, drink water, and read its Wikipedia page just to recall the plot of the movie. Balance it with plenty of twists and turns. And at last, I would like to talk about writing and storytelling aspect of Brick, because this is one of the strongest points of this movie. The script by Rian Johnson is compelling enough to get your interest, but as I mentioned earlier, contains dialogue which at first viewing might not get into your head. Rian tries to bind plot points and connect them all to the ending, and that works profoundly. Looking and trying to understand the plot, one can easily validate that there's a good amount of research involved in the script. Every character in the movie is witty and has its own motive. The ending does manage to deliver surprise, but if you're an eagle-eyed viewer, you can already see it coming. The entire movie mostly focuses on Emily's murder. Despite based on the setting of high school, we neither see the students attending classes nor their parents. In one scene, Brandon does mention his mom, but we don't get to see her. And it's same with all the characters. But that's not a problem. This works very well with the environment of the movie, and also due to budget constraints, it must have been difficult for the makers to get more people. So Brick is a movie with its own ups and downs, a movie helmed as a neo-near murder mystery movie. It indeed manages to develop an intriguing mystery, but that doesn't come without the cost of its dialogues. The dialogue are fast and complex, which will confuse the casual viewers. The script is well written, with each piece placed and handled carefully. The movie does lose its pace in between, but after few scenes, it manages to balance it up. If you're a fan of neo-noir cinema, or you're a person who just loves quoting dialogues of a film and doesn't mind some complicated dialogues, then this movie is for you. It's a good homage to those old detective neon noir movies and should satisfy the fans of the genre. The reason I mentioned earlier that I have mixed feelings about Brick Movie despite praising its direction, writing, and storytelling is because I believe that whether we enjoy a particular movie or not depends upon our psychology, mood, and thought process at the time of watching it. Personally, I love those kind of movies which can make me feel some kind of emotions. If a movie could make me feel thrills or laugh or rush after those intense action sequence or bind me through suspense, that movie is already good for me. And that's what was missing from Brick. After finishing the movie, I just felt blank. Yes, it had some good plot, but nothing managed to provide me with that much required excitement. The same may or may not happen to you. But if after reading this review, there's even a small part of you that wants to watch this movie, then give it a try and make your own opinion. There's a scene in David Lynch's Blue Velvet that takes visual shorthand to new heights, a shot of the hero's family TV set. It purports to be footage from a 40s film noir thriller. In crisp black and white, we see a hand holding a gun and a shadowy figure who appears to mounting a set of stairs. You can waste a lot of time trying to find out which movie it's from, but in all likelihood, it doesn't exist. With one fake shot, Lynch is capturing the essence of the entire film. How crime, threat, and menace actually titillate us. Whose hand is it? Whose gun? Where is it going? And why? This teasing fragment tells us a lot about the nature of entertainment and our rapacious appetite for thrillers, cop flicks, and trashy whodunits. With Brick. First-time director Rian Johnson appears to have taken that one observation, then stretched it, twisted it, and salted it to create one of the most original and entertaining movies of the year so far. You might hard-boil it down to The Outsiders, as scripted by classic pulp writers Dashiell Hammett, James M. Corr, most obviously Raymond Chandler, but more simply, Brick understands the beauty of an honest mystery, elegantly mounting a series of clues, with twists and red herrings along the way, before weaving it all together for a mind-reeling climax. Be warned, though, it does take some time for the film to settle, because Brick has one major gimmick in its grasp. Though shot in lustrous color and filmed in the wide-open, sunny suburbs of San Clemente, in California, Johnson's high school teens converse in a lingo that owes more to tough guy Private Dick Sam Spade than the valley speak of Clueless and American Pie. Cops are bulls, drug addicts to themselves, and duck soup is pretty hard to see slang for easy pickings. It's not always convincing, and the mostly unknown cast sometimes struggle with it, but Brick sticks with its convictions. And after a good 20 minutes, all the jive talk sifts into the background. Dot chiefly responsible for the movie's success has a strong lead performance by Joseph Gordon-Levitt as loner Brandon Fry, a maverick defined by his preference for eating lunch by himself round the back of the school. The former third rock from the Sun Star firmly establishes himself as an evolving talent to watch. A kid who is prone to the rough stuff, Brandon is a sad but dedicated avenging angel hung up on his poor ex, Emily D. Ravine, and determined to save her from the in-crowd of chic drug users and pushers whose approval she so desperately craves, which is vital to a proper understanding of Brick's basic mechanism. Because although on paper it seems like a hollow stylistic exercise, it has plenty to say about the world of teenagers. Next to no adults appear, just two, and they're hardly proactive. And Brendan's hunched-up isolation stands in stark defiance of those around him, including Kara, Megan Good, the showgirl with the human lap, Dog Forever, Into and femme fatale Laura, Nora Heitner, the beautiful girl from the beautiful world of the beautiful people. Brendan circles the demi-monde like a shark, unfazed by the glamour, watching with unimpressed eyes as the likes of Lure's boastful jock-dork boyfriend pimp out their dignity for popularity. But not being with the whiners doesn't make Brendan a loser. He has equal contempt for sad sex donor, due a feckless punk with the connection to Emily. Brendan's loathing of these cliques and clans is what enables him to transform from the quivering wreck who finds Emily's body into a Terminator-style vigilante. His mission is not simply to bring down justice, but to play all the angles and be sure that everyone who's had a hand in Emily's downfall gets their own sweet, assured, and tailor-made destruction. True, it gets convoluted at times, although it's not quite as murky as Howard Hawks' 1946 adaptation of Chandler's The Big Sleep, which even the novelist himself couldn't fathom. Johnson follows his own story with the fast-paced logic that sometimes leaves question marks dangling. But all those points add a little more to ponder and savor once the bigger conundrum is finally cracked. It will certainly split people into those who buy the conceit and those that don't. Those who see Daffy sub Bugsy Malone dill, where others gobble up its usual suspects Goose Chase and debate its Donnie Darko-like demands for interpretation. But Brick wasn't made for everybody. It's a film that nobody should agree on. Like Brandon himself, we should just be proud to differ. Dot Johnson's films each have a definite aesthetic, from the twee steampunk of Fatha Brothers Bloom to the deliberate paradoxes of time travel and selfhood in his most recent film, Alupra Brick. His feature debut is no different. It's straight up noir, with hard-boiled slang, a plot more convoluted fan of the big sleep, a flawed hero who plays all the angles to avenge a wrongdoer, and it's set in a modern-day high school. After discovering the dead body of his ex-girlfriend Emily D. Ravine washed up in a culvert, Brandon Fry Joseph Gordon-Levitt sets out on a journey of revenge. He should have dug more than a few graves before embarking. The bodies piled high and deep as he uncovers drug deals gone wrong, loose women and the tough guys who love them, and a perniciously seedy underbelly to the underdeveloped scrubland of Southern California. This isn't a Eritrea. Ave Matted with its private eye roots updating the standard mysteries with email hacks, cell phones, and plots that seemed like they actually could happen in an average high school. Do a Break is an adolescent sunshine noir. It's the noir of dawn and dusk, of soft blue light and washed-out despair, in which the Dur Satin hero forces bloody resolution to solve the murder body can't be damned. The high school setting translates well. Life is manned in high school with druggies' brains and the upper crust posing affectedly. And that's exactly what everyone does in a classic hard-boiled thriller. 2. The closed community operates like that of the Shamuses and Khans in the LA and San Francisco of the early 20th century. You know where to find me is something Philip Marlowe might say, even if he wouldn't be referring to where people sit at lunch. Brandon wants to know the full story of his ex-girlfriend's death. I set to know who put her in the spot, who put her in front of the gun. The quest puts him back into the tricky play of the high school world. He had previously been a small-time drug dealer who ratted out his partner to save his own skin with the vice principal. And what great implications that title has in a story like this. This isn't, in other words, a good guy. He's a rat, a loner, and an obsessive. But as with the Continental Op or Sam Spade, we don't care. Fictional detectives come in two flavors, those who deduct and those who push a few buttons to see which one lights up. Then noir detective is the second type, and the fun is in watching the labyrinthine machinations of a man who is smarter than even the sauciest of dangerous names. Plus, how can we not love a line like this? Throw one at me if you want. Hashhead. I've got all 5 senses and I slept last night. That puts me 6 up on the lot of you. Johnson's decision to set in war revenge tale in a high school has few offbeat moments, as when the pen, aka the kingpin, the drug lord of this unnamed Berg, played by Lucas Haas, asks Brendan if he likes talking, the Hobbit books. Or when the pin's mom serves cornflakes and apple juice to a group of young men who are thinking about killing one another. But on the whole, dark humor is just dark enough to let the secondary characters shine, especially Nora Hatner as Laura, the one person smart enough to present Brandon with a real challenge. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the star. Though Ella Brick is just his second big role after over 100 episodes of A Third Rock from the Sun, it's easy to see why he has had so much success with serious roles since this film came out in 2005. His character spends most of the movie injured, possibly with a punctured lung, on the run, and getting hit in the face. But Gordon-Levitt projects a resolve that we can only in the best noir traditionally referred to as steely, and we never doubt his intelligence or will to succeed. I wholeheartedly love this movie for its mood, its illusions, its flawed hero, and its uncompromising cynicism. But if you have never been drawn to detective stories or the look and mood of the 1930s and 1940s, you probably won't. The dialogue will feel stilted, the plot obtusely confusion, and the resolution useless. If, however, you wish that life sometimes played out like a short story in a classic pulp magazine, this is the movie for you. In the opening scenes of Brick, high school student Brandon Joseph Gordon-Levitt discovers an ex-girlfriend, Emily D. Ravine, has been murdered. Still emotionally wounded from the breakup, Brandon commits to investigate the tragedy and bring the criminals to justice. Brick's Brendan is such an appealing character. An outsider to the popular groups on campus, he is practically invisible. Brandon recruits the help of another outsider, a nerdy, brilliant kid nicknamed Brain. Together, they unravel a complex drug-dealing organization and work to destroy it from the inside. Brandon is a quick-witted and street-savvy tough guy willing to risk everything to seek justice. His adventure draws viewers in and thoroughly entertains mystery-loving audiences. Brick is a little independent. Thriller with big aspirations. It succeeds in its homage to the more detective flicks of the 30s and 40s. It surprises with clever plot twists and likable characters. But most impressive of all, it presents one of the best dramas about high school students since Mean Greek Brick stands out from the cinematic crowd because it defies the stereotypical teenage storyline. After all, who said teenage movies need to have an abundance of sex, gore, or nudity to be a winner? Brick contains none of these and very little cursing. There is implied drug abuse, but it is strongly rebuked throughout the story. Violence is used sparingly, but it too is subdued far below what viewers might expect in a murder mystery. Brick stumbles once or twice with its mammoth-like dialogue, but overall it is a genuine treat. The plot may occasionally feel coerced, but the story delights far more than it disappoints. Brick does not entirely succeed at developing a few superficial characters, but then these flaws are very easily overlooked. Emily D. Ravine, best known for her role as Claire on ABC's Lost on TV, plays the tragic Emily and convincingly loses her Australian accent. Lucas Haas also turns in a fine performance as the pin that is kingpin of the organization Brandon intends to bring down. Brick is a solid, well-D story, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt delivers an outstanding performance worthy of much attention. It is rated R for some violence and drug references, but it has a strong moral worldview rebuking evil. In the movie, authority figures, the police, and a vice principal are seen in a positive light. Rick also places a strong emphasis on personal responsibility, choices, and consequences. How long has it been since a tough guy in the movies used the word K-Bluey? It hasn't been done since the Truman administration, I would have thought. This bizarre and ingenious neon noir from U.S. writer-director Rian Johnson, however, revives it with a straight face, along with loads of other snappy takes from the era of the Maltese Falcon. Johnson has written a convoluted gumshoe thriller in the style of Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler, but sets it with a flourish in 2006 among the pupils of a Californian high school. This institution's quarters and sports fields are populated by shady ladies and big-hearted cynics who are all school kids with no apparent school work to do. Instead of Macs, they wear sweatshirts instead of snap-brimmed fedoras. We get baseball caps, and instead of luminous black and white, it's filmed in the stonewashed colors of indie American cinema. This is a precocious world in which guys roughly advise each other to get some sleep and can take a crunchy beating with nothing more than a few cuts and a stoic determination to find out who it is once them beaten. The dialogue archly crackles. The atmosphere lowers, and various exotic femmes fatal smolder dangerously into a masculine ear. Johnson's cast play it absolutely straight and almost persuade us to take it straight, too. Bugsy Malone it isn't. The tech figure is Brendan Joseph Gordon-Levitt, a loner and malcontent student who carries a torch for his ex-girlfriend Emily. Emily Devine, who has not been seen for days. Emily dumped him when she wanted to hang out with the hip, druggy crowd that Brendan despises. After Brendan gets a call from a very scared Emily, he has a terrifying encounter in a storm drain tunnel, and with the help of his savant buddy and fellow spectacles-wearer brain Matt Ori, discovers Emily got herself mixed up with the plan to steal a brick of pure heroin from a local dealer called The Pin, played by Lucas Haas, an actor who 20 years ago played the little Amish boy in Witness. There are many witty sticks of dialogue. Too many to reproduce here, but I especially love Brandon's disdainful exchange of macho challenges in the school parking lot with the knuckle-ahead jock Brad Brian White. A stalemate crossfire of yeah, ends with Brendan suavely suggesting Brad look the word up in the thesaurus under why. The high point in the movie where the discrepancy between the 1940s genre and 21 Street century setting is most obvious and yet also most cleverly resolved is when Brendan is Halden after a fight to see the school's vice principal, Mr. Trulove, played by Richard Roundtree. In the real world, Brandon's situation would necessitate an appearance by some grown-ups, his mother, or indeed the police here called the Bulls. Yet the vice principal is the only adult authority permitted to appear on screen. And within this self-enclosed, lawless world, he treats Brandon the way a harassed police lieutenant would treat an errant but talented detective, or a private eye who knows too much to be pushed around like the other schmucks. Brandon has already helped the school authorities with insider information about drugs, but furiously declines to be treated like a snitch. "If you've got something on me, write me up," he snarls. "See you at the parent conference." Maybe Jimmy Cagney could have made that line sound more belligerent, but not by much. Using this crime genre necessitates a little socio-cultural rethinking. Any other film about young people mixed up with drug baron in California might well need to show gang colors from the black, Latino, yard, and Russian worlds. But Brick sticks to its essentially monoglot Anglo-Saxon Malu from an earlier age. The quaint figure of the Pin with his cloak and preposterous cane is a younger, slimline Sidney Greenstreet. Violence is in the form of fisticuffs, though pretty nasty fisticuffs, and guns are produced sparingly and they are held upright, not tilted over 90 degrees in the gangster style. Turning these old-school pulp person into youngsters is a comic or ironic effect without comedy or irony. Shane? Black's Kiss Kiss. Bang Bang did something similar, but couldn't stop nudging us in the ribs about how hilariously retro the whole thing looked, and how brutally cool and contemporary we should therefore judge the whole enterprise to be. But you are not invited, and Brick to laugh or smirk or recognize movie breath quotations, but just be intrigued and exhilarated by the classic fiction template. When Brandon beats up on a stoner, he hits him in a studied old-school way. A right-to-left slap, a left-to-right back and repeat. I remember Humphrey Bogart demonstrating this move on a whimpering broad for Woody Allen's benefit, and play it again, Sam. In fact, the whole film reminded me of the insouciant acting students in Gore Vidal's Mirage. They are indifferent to the 1940s Hollywood heritage, but one at least has modeled himself on Bogart. The high school movie has always been a uniquely powerful genre capable of fiercely adult themes, and it is possible to read Brick as a stylized dream metaphor for the pain of young love or the agony of drug abuse. But it is difficult to care much about these weirdly contrived characters. And Brick is more a super smart experiment in style maintained with tremendous energy and consistency. It's gratifyingly hard-boiled, but not as tasty as you'd think. Shot in Prague in a custom-built apartment complex, specifically for the film. Abria tells the story of Tim Olivia Schweighöfer, at Dealgrapher. Oi, naturally, a couple going through the motions and barely keeping their relationship afloat following a traumatic loss. After a last-ditch attempt by Olivia to keep the spark alive goes awry, she decides to pack her things and leave only to find their apartment is completely shut in. All their doors, windows, exterior walls are completely sealed off by a dark collection of brick-like shapes with a texture and feel completely unlike anything they've ever encountered. With no communication, no technology, and no explanation for these events, Tim and Olivia work together in search of answers and a way out of this confusing, mysterious, claustrophobic nightmare. Breaking down walls and floors between apartments, they gain the help of their neighbors to aid in their mission to leave. But as they draw closer to finding a way out, new forces rising, tensions find more ways to keep them in. Joining Schweighöfer to pilgrim for Ruby in this condensed cast are Frederick Crooks as Gail Spurley Williams, the Queen's Gambit as Anna Murathan and Muslu Barbarians as Yuri Alexander Bayer, the lives of others as Friedman, Sura Anafalisli, Axel Berner as Oswalta. A Brick follows a classic puzzle box plot construction that entices the viewer with an unexplained event that entices and engages its audience while slowly answering the question along the way. Some of my favorite films, TV shows, especially the works of Damon Lynn Laff, follow this structure incredibly well, typically making the characters and the moral philosophical quandaries they endure so engrossing that the mystery takes a back seat to the meteor plot. Entanglements. Unfortunately, Abria does not do much to excite and entice the audience beyond the poorly rendered CGI wall of confusion. Dot. The film is an obvious, poorly executed genre blend that doesn't do any of those genres particularly well. The science fiction doesn't get that technical, as the mystery largely gets solved by a dead man, and mostly just discovered by a video game programmer, an architect, a collection of bumbling, drug-adult, paranoid neighbors who don't add much to the proceedings. The thriller aspects don't kick in until halfway through the film and are constantly derailed by conscious poor use of drama and pointless, painful-to-watch philosophical musings. The movie just wants to scream he built a wall around himself emotionally. Get it? He had to break down those walls to get through these walls. Get it? While occasionally trying to get deeper with the why us conundrum that tries to trauma bond the characters together in a fruitless, nauseating, extremely forced manner conducted by side characters who don't deserve more backstory. Brick's story construction feels like a relic of the cheap, small coat-friendly productions that got greenlit a handful of years ago, created around 1-2 location settings with minimal characters who mostly have to reckon with confinement, political, social commentary, conspiracy theorists, or all of the above. With so many of those films coming and going already, it seems too little too late for Brick to make an impact. Even if it was made well, it really wasn't. The toughest part to square up is what the audience is supposed to take away from such a story. Surveillance is good because it will give you all the answers. Always believe the tech guy over the conspiracy theorist. Doomsday believer. Even if what they say is completely plausible, always bet that something positive will occur, even if you have very little basis to go on. Don't trust your neighbors. Put emergency messages over radio frequencies that they know can't penetrate the walls. If anyone has any answers, I'm willing to listen. On a positive note, one of the main reasons they do, they were not the reason this film did not succeed. In fact, outside of a reasonable yet limited performance from Murathan Muslu, they combine for one of the rare bright spots in the film. While the writing will let them down, the duo rise their best to elevate unearned day, dramatic tension, and bring the audience back from long stretches of fledgling supporting characters. Their familiarity from an army of thieves proved useful to give this movie something to cling to when the story goes wayward. The German Netflix thrill rub Braya takes a smart, simple premise, builds something unique and engaging, and then temporarily goes insane before getting back to the same time it's original and can appeal to anyone around the world. And it starts very strong with two characters fully defined within minutes and then suddenly locked in with no explanation. When a thriller starts as strong as this one does, and then you're looking at very middling critic and audience scores, either you're the odd one out or something goes wrong. Something definitely goes wrong here. While leading towards the ending, they found a way to piss off everyone. I found the on-scene predictable but very satisfying and fits everything we knew. I did not care for the nonsense that came just before it. I suspect there are a lot of other viewers who liked the horror-esque moments but hated the ending. You can't please everyone, and these filmmakers found a way to please no one, despite writing a unique, inventive, engaging, and thought thriller. The structure is extremely good. Things keep moving and escalating at an appropriate pace and always building on what we know. Tim Matthias at Dyler and Olivia Rubio are the main couple stuck in a rut where one is ready to leave and move on forever, and the other does not want to change. They have just broken up, and suddenly their apartment is encased by a black brick wall. It's not brick. It's an impenetrable force resembling a brick design. Each new thought and idea the characters have come at the same time, the audience will be thinking the same thing, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.